Camrim, Draymore Palace. There was nothing more frustrating than not knowing what was happening outside the place he once proudly called his home. The isolation he could handle without issues. Being the firstborn of Duke Cornelius Draymore meant that, outside his immediate family, friends were a rarity, giving him more time to study and focus on the future. It suited him just fine. He always preferred the quiet tranquility of solitude. He also couldn't blame the servants, maids, guards, and butlers for following his father's orders to the letter. What choice did they have? In their place, he doubted he would do any different. The only thing that was as bad, if not worse, than the frustration gripping his heart was the sinking feeling of complete and utter inadequacy and impotence at being unable to do anything to oppose the man whom not half a year ago he had viewed as his role model despite his flaws. Again, he understood his father's position, and his multitude of responsibilities prevented him from being a stable constant within their lives. Praise was a rarity that parted from his lips. Approval was even scarcer. He never was a doting father, but he wasn't neglectful either. While he never pushed them into a path of his own design, he rarely encouraged them with anything more than terse words and the occasional gesture of physical affection. Yet, he always knew his father's expectations were great. A hard man to please who punished failure, real failure and not mere mistakes, harshly. Again, he could understand it. The weight put on his father's shoulders was immense. Placed between his family and his duty, it was obvious such a man would choose one over the other. He didn't hate him or resent him for it. How could he? What right did he have when his father worked not only for him, his sister, his late wife, and the countless millions of lives that depended on him and waited with eager breaths at every word he uttered? "Damn you, father!" Gabriel Draymore cursed in a whispered tone, failing to focus on the book he was reading. That was the part that hurt the most. To know that his father, the great and mighty Duke Cornelius Draymore, was a traitor, a man he once believed in, who always strived for the betterment of the principality in the role he'd chosen to serve in. All his speeches and moral lessons about loyalty, order, and strength were hollow now, so irrelevant. To see an idol fall from the highest places. He couldn't even stomach the idea of breathing the same air as his treacherous father. "I wonder what you'd say regarding the actions and betrayal of your most beloved brother, Uncle Joseph," he muttered again, invoking the name of his late uncle, the previous prince. "Thah!" he scoffed, shaking his head. "What would you say about your siblings, I wonder? My father is a traitor. Uncle Oscar is too vapid to take any sport of initiative, yet resolute enough not to get involved in anything he doesn't stand to gain something from. Aunt Sylvia is ever the pretentious pragmatist, but I always thought she was, at the very least, loyal to her morals and principles. It seems I never truly knew those around me," he said, closing the book only to set it gently on the table next to his couch. Closing his eyes, Gabriel waited patiently for nearly a full minute until a barely perceptible sound reached his ears. Footsteps, organized steps in marching formation. Half a minute later, they stopped. Seconds passed until the marching resumed, moving away. Opening his eyes, he glanced at the masterfully crafted tower clock. "They're 15 minutes earlier today. They keep slightly shifting their guard schedules," he frowned. "Damn you, traitor!" he said, thinking about his father. After several moments of discontent, Gabriel regained his composure, enough to glance around his prison again. His father kept him in a rather comfortable, gilded cage. He could exercise, take pleasant baths, eat the best meals, and there was no end to the stimulus to keep boredom at bay. The sight of everything made him sick. "Here I am, a prisoner in my own home, unable to do anything to help you, my prince," he lamented weakly as he sank into his couch. Minutes passed in silence, only his shallow breathing cutting through the gripping ambience. The thought of escape passed his mind in the meantime. Again. Gabriel couldn't even groan anymore at his own naivety. Escape was impossible. He'd already tried, but his father was a genius for a reason. Layers upon layers of countermeasures and protocols of vigilance. He couldn't access any network. There were guards stationed outside his bedroom doors all day and night. Every servant was forbidden from performing even the most basic interaction with him, and there were cameras and eyes locked on him without rest. He acted in the most casual, repetitive, monotonous way possible every day to hide his examinations. There was nothing he could use as an effective weapon. Sure, he could tear a chair's leg and use it as a club, but against shields, armor, and plasma weapons, he'd had better chance using his fists. Without access to the network, only the enhanced reality function of his eyes remained, but that quickly offered nothing. He once tried to start a fire. It was suppressed before the first embers could consume a torn page. He tried to overload the door's security systems with jury-rigged electrical discharges. The guards weren't stupid. Instead of trying to subdue him themselves, they immediately called for reinforcements, pinning him down before he could take 3 steps past the doors. Now he couldn't even be trusted with a simple data pad. 2 weeks of careful effort were wasted. His most boneheaded, direct, and successful was to jump off his balcony simply. Despite his enhancements and implants, falling from 8 stories high would kill him. Luckily for him, there was a beautiful tree near his balcony and a shrubbery at its base that spared him from suffering more than some minor cuts and bruises. He was promptly captured 5 minutes later by drones and guards as he tried and failed to find a way to overcome the other defenses present across the palace's grounds. When that failed, a kinetic shield was placed outside his balcony, and the tree and shrubbery were removed, so he would not try it again. They right, he would have. And this time, with a plan in mind, not merely a simple goal of escape, without further plans or ways to overcome other obstacles in mind. He never truly cursed his lack of ability and proficiency for violence, martial prowess, and combat skills. He knew how to use a traditional sword and shoot, for non-lethal duels, fencing, and the occasional hunting expedition. He wasn't a warrior. He was never interested in military life, not even in passing or as a topic of entertainment. And he certainly wasn't like Veronica. But now, he cursed his inability to fight outside spreadsheets, legal confines, social norms, and bureaucratic processes. What am I going to do? He asked himself as ideas and plans formed in his head, only to be discarded a moment later. His options were limited, to say the least. He tried to protest by refusing to eat. His father ordered guards to force-feed him. He didn't try again. He tried to feign injuries and sickness as a last desperate attempt, but that only dragged physicians and medical scanners instead of getting him out. A childish tactic, but what else could he do? The only real option left at his disposal was, quite simply, to threaten his life. His father wouldn't allow it, of course, and what would that gain him? It would hurt his father, that much was certain, if he managed to succeed. The key word being if, but that wouldn't stop him or even simply slow him down. No. His father was a man of precise focus, unrelenting will, and strategic genius that only Clara could hope to match. Clara. Princess Clara Astor. His cousin. The thought of her made him frown, sending him into a spiral of confusion that made his mind throb with pained strain. No matter how many times he thought about it, he couldn't understand why she didn't side with his father. Where Cornelius was cold and distant with his children, he was doting and attentive with her and her alone. He'd seen it himself. There was genuine love in his eyes whenever they talked. The kind of love that spoke of admiration, understanding, and longing. He couldn't hide it. Perhaps he never even tried. But ever since Clara began to display her aptitudes, Cornelius Draymore looked at her with the unspoken desire for Clara to be his daughter, his child. Oh, how he resented Clara for getting the attention of his father without even trying. At one point, he even hated her. Juvenile grudges and conflicting emotions clashed against his logical mind, creating distance between them. Never enough for them to fall apart, but enough to touch the invisible wall that stood in their midst. The reason for such blatant favoritism was so evident that he couldn't comprehend why most of his other cousins and close friends didn't see it. Clara was exceptionally talented and intelligent, a veritable genius in her own way. In her, he saw someone who could match his own brilliant mind blow for blow. And his father saw that immense potential in her even though she was but a child. But Clara had her own flaws. Initially, she showed no interest in taking her role as a princess seriously. She was only ever preoccupied with her own interests and satisfying her wicked, twisted sense of humor. Despite that, his father never stopped encouraging and doting on her with kind words, gifts, and attention. He often wondered what else his father saw in her. How far did his plans go? What did he envision for her future that only he could comprehend? Those were questions he couldn't answer. It wasn't until that infamous moment that his cousin was changed forever. Her focus shifted, and she embraced her role with unwavering conviction, quickly transforming her and Cynthia into the dreaded figures they were today. But it was his father who stepped in to put a stop to the bloodshed and chaos left in the wake of her reaping. Gabriel let out a stifled chuckle. Ironic, is it not? You stopped an incident that could have spilled into a potential civil war, only to carry out your own coup scant years later. It was precisely that bond they shared, that singular moment where he stepped in to do something no one else could, and their subsequent strengthened relationship that confused him so much. Clearly, Clara didn't know about her uncle's intentions beforehand. She would have acted in some way to either help or stop him, which meant that his father, despite his intentions and favoritism, didn't trust his most adored niece enough to confide in her. He didn't trust him either, that much was obvious. And Veronica? He couldn't tell her anything, even if he wanted to. She simply had no concept of subtlety and would lash out at the merest provocation or insult thrown at their traitor of a father. Why didn't his father trust the one he honestly saw as his own child? Cornelius Draymore wasn't a cruel man, nor was he truly neglectful. His love wasn't conditional. Veronica proved that beyond doubt on Calcasidar. It pained him to admit that his father loved him, even if he had difficulty showing it directly to anyone who wasn't Clara or his late mother. So why keep her in the dark at all? A shudder crawled up his spine at the idea of them joining forces in this succession dispute. Luckily for his cousin, the prince, Clara had rejected her uncle and sided with her brother. But why? She had all the reasons to join him outright, regardless of anything else. Yet she didn't. As a headache was threatening to make itself present, he heard something odd and new. It was less than a whisper, barely there, but it was real. He focused, straining his hearing, trying to catch that noise again. There it was, not 3 seconds later. Louder. Closer. Creeping? He turned to his right a few seconds later, locating where the noise was coming from. From the wall, a minuscule hole was punched into being, barely half a centimeter in diameter. From it, a long, thin centipede creature emerged. Mechanical. He stared at it as it quickly crept out of the wall, shooting at the hole it left behind with a white substance that quickly sealed off the entry point. Gabriel remained seated, merely watching the construct crawl on the ceiling, far beyond his reach. It continued to crawl until it reached one of the concealed cameras. It latched onto it, and then nothing happened. That is, until he heard 2 heavy thuds outside his door. A moment later, the doors opened to reveal a group of 6 honor guards, 2 maids, and to his shock, a gray and black-haired man with a bushy mustache and deep, colorful green eyes, who entered the room in a hurry. Gabriel jumped to his feet. "What is the meaning of this, Peterson?" he asked, fear gripping his heart as only a single answer manifested itself in his mind. "I beg you, my Lord Gabriel, don't ask questions and come with us. We don't have more than a few minutes to act, if that." Peterson, head chef of Draymore Palace, implored as 2 of the honor guards secured the weapons and removed the helmets of the 2 fallen guards. Gabriel closed his eyes for a moment, then nodded and moved to follow the head chef as the group began to run down the hallways. "Why, Peterson?" he asked as soon as the first corner was turned. "We are loyal to the prince, your Lord Father, and the principality in equal measure, my Lord Gabriel," Peterson began, leading the group as fast as they could run. "Regardless, there are few of us who disapprove of his lordship's actions and less so of your confinement. We couldn't voice our opinions in broad daylight, however. Those who did were promptly removed. Transferred to other stations and duties," he said as he came to an abrupt halt. His eyes flickered for a moment, then he let out a whispered curse. "They're already countering the initial diversion." "We won't reach the rally point," said one of the maids in a trembling tone. "We all knew the risks," said one of the honor guard. "Lord Peterson, carry on. Nabeji and I will create another diversion." Without waiting for a rebuttal, he turned to Gabriel and gave him a deep bow. "Be safe, Lord Gabriel." "Loyalty is its own reward," he announced before he and his named companion ran back from whence they came. "Let's keep moving," Peterson ordered as he and his remaining companions broke into a run down the long hallways devoid of other servants and guards. It won't be long before they notice their video feeds are set in a loop. "You're an old fool, Peterson," Gabriel cursed. "All of you, my father won't be pleased. He may execute you for this, failure or not." "We know, my lord," replied the other, older maid. "I've served loyally for over 40 years. My house will not miss me, and they will not be involved. Your Lord Father is a great man, but what he is doing is wrong and unbecoming of him in all regards. If his ambitions fail to be realized, the ruination of House Draymore may follow. With you standing against him, maybe the prince shall show mercy and restraint," Peterson added. Gabriel bit his tongue, nearly drawing blood. There was nothing he could say to Peterson, a man he respected and cherished for all his little gestures of kindness and genuine care, not just aimed at him, but to everyone in service to House Draymore. He couldn't begin to imagine how much it pained him to do what he was doing, to be labeled a traitor and take the chance to let him escape. How long had he and his colleagues, whose names he didn't know, planned this? Frustration returned to him. There was nothing he could do but obey and let them do whatever they had agreed upon doing. Am I truly so useless? He asked himself as they ran. They made it to the ample exterior pool when the alarms began to sound. Nodding to themselves, the maids broke from the formation, running in different directions. They'll provide further distractions, claiming they saw us somewhere else and guiding as many guards and patrols away, Peterson explained in a somber tone. They'll deploy drones, trackers, and hounds too, Gabriel said as the group arrived at a small storage room at the far end of the pool. One of the honor guard used his plasma sword to pierce through the security panel, unlocking the door. Then move, my Lord Gabriel, Peterson said, shoving Gabriel into the storage room while two of the honor guards scattered to fulfill yet another diversion. The remaining honor guard followed, closing the door and taking defensive positions. At the same time, Peterson uncovered a maintenance panel. Without hesitation, Gabriel jumped into the hole, followed shortly by Peterson. The panel above them was covered as they began to crawl as fast as they could. Where are my cousins and the Council of Nobles held? Gabriel asked as he crawled. I don't know, my Lord Gabriel. No one knows their exact location. The only certainty is that they are here on Camrim. That might change regardless of whether you are successful in your escape or not, Peterson replied, chuckling. This is nothing like what we prepared for. My Lord Gabriel, please, forgive me for my incompetence. I thought we had more time. Gabriel let out a mirthless laugh as his eyes narrowed. Incompetence? You've achieved something I've failed to do multiple times. Truth be told, I was starting to accept my situation and remain held captive in silence until my father's downfall came. If I am to leave, then I'll find a way to reunite with my cousin the prince and fight alongside him to the best of my abilities if he'll have me. You've given me that chance, Peterson. You and your allies. I shan't forget this gesture. It fills my heart with joy to hear you speak such words, my Lord Gabriel, Peterson began, but was interrupted by the sound of distant shots. But we must hurry if there is any hope for that to become a reality. Then hurry, we shall, Gabriel exclaimed. Time passed as a blur before his eyes until they made it to the end of the seemingly endless narrow tunnel. Exiting on the other side after climbing up a ladder, Gabriel discovered they had made it past the outer perimeter of the palace's walls and were now near some sort of water filtration or treatment machinery. Hurry, my Lord Gabriel, Peterson exclaimed as he sealed the door. Gabriel followed him through the dense vegetation as the sound of alarms, distant shouts, barking, and a gentle stream were heard. Peterson rushed to a conveniently placed white stone. Upon reaching it, the head chef pulled out a small device from his chest pocket and pressed a button. A moment later, a distortion field revealed half a dozen hoverbikes. My Lord Gabriel, please take this, Peterson said, turning to his baffled sire. Gabriel, please, listen to me. Gabriel shook his head and focused on Peterson, the older man's face a mix of relief and panic as he shoved a credit chit into his left hand. There are 200,000 credits in it. Use them to find a way to get off-world. Travel to Emerald Territory, seek refuge with Duchess Sylvia if you can. If that option is closed to you, then head for a neutral territory, he exclaimed desperately. I'm sorry I can do more, Gabriel. You've done more than enough, Peterson, Gabriel said before moving to hug the older man in a tight but brief embrace. Come with me. I can't, Peterson countered. We were supposed to meet with my son, Paradine, but now he's aware the initial plan has failed. Don't search for him. I ordered him to destroy all evidence linking him to our plan if it failed. You must find a way to blend in with the masses and leave Camrim. Hurry, Gabriel. His lordship won't be pleased, and I fear his ire may be great once he learns of what I've done. He then turned to the hoverbikes. The battery of their refraction fields should last until you reach the city. I may not be able to go with you, but I can give you more time. Now go! Go! Gabriel spared a few more seconds to stare into the eyes of the older man. Then, he mounted one of the hoverbikes, engaged the field, and flew away, mere centimeters above the stream's surface. His mind was in turmoil, but he advanced, knowing he wouldn't have another chance if he allowed it to slip past his fingers. It didn't take long before he heard an explosion behind him.